Don't be afraid to fail. Go balls to the wall. Don't micromanage people, and if you need to fire someone, do it immediately. You're the most important person in your company. And this is a quote that's included in the Women Entrepreneur Revolution Ready, Set, Launch. And this is from Anya Fernald. And today, the Family Law Insider podcast is excited to introduce Jenn Aubert.
Hi.
Jenn, hi Jenn, and congratulations on your new book. It was just released on Mother's Day. And if I could give just a little background on Jenn, Jenn is a mom. She's an entrepreneur. She's an acupuncturist. She used to be in the corporate world. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her story that led her to write this book. But in the course of the journey, she had the chance, well, actually, she made the opportunity for herself to reach out to over 100 women entrepreneurs. And in the midst of these interviews with them, in her research, she learned secrets that made these women successful. And now she's boiled them down into a book for all of us to learn from. So she's here to share her wisdom with us. And welcome, Jenn. Thank you so much for appearing today on the show.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm excited to be here.
So congratulations on the book, first off.
Thank you.
And, I want to talk, if you could, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, Jenn, where you started, in your professional career and what led you to where you are today as an entrepreneur with a practice.
Sure. So, typical to most people, where I've come from and where I am today has been a windy path. After graduating from college, I spent, I would say, about 10 years in the corporate world, ending up in the executive search world, so recruiting executives for Fortune 500 companies. So it was one of those, wonderfully glamorous, lots of travel, meeting very exciting people. But when I sat in my office every day, I was knowing deep in my heart that I wasn't meant for this type of work. But I didn't know exactly what I was meant to do. So I stuck it out, trying to make the most of it and the best of the situation until I found out what I wanted to do when I grew up. So in the process, at the time I was living in San Francisco, I had decided to move to the New York office and was working on Wall Street and started seeing an acupuncturist for my stress and a bunch of other ailments and thought, wait, I'm showing up to my acupuncturist office in a suit. She walks in her flip-flops and a summer dress, and I thought, okay, I like what she has going on. And she also essentially owned her own business, which I had always had dreams of doing.
Okay.
So very quickly, I switched gears, went back to graduate school, got my master's, and then moved back out to California to start my own business from the ground up.
So, in acupuncture, Jenn?
In acupuncture.
Okay.
So I've been at that for a little over 4 years. And what happened is, as you know, and most of probably the listeners know, when you start a business, you're out networking and meeting other interesting people in different fields. And what I found was, through the women that I was meeting, was there was all these hang-ups and issues, and everyone was doing it alone. They were starting their businesses essentially like in a vacuum, without really looking out for mentors, without really getting help that we needed, and we're all having the same types of concerns and issues that came up around self-confidence, around feeling like we could charge an appropriate rate, all those kind of usual hang-ups that a lot of women seem to have. So in the process, and this was kind of my final aha moment, I was looking at my bookshelf one day, and I noticed that all of the books on my bookshelf that were related to business were written by men. So my books on marketing, my books on SEO, on just general business, and I thought, okay, just an observation, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's other books out there that have a little bit more of a feminine bent, or that aren't written in such a kind of masculine type of way. So I decided to, I was involved in an online forum with a bunch of other women business owners. And I simply asked them, who are they reading? What books are they reading? Who are they following? And then I casually just asked, who are your who are your role models? Who are the people that you're looking at, either that you know or you don't, within your field or outside, that you're really find interesting, that are inspiring you and you're learning from. And what came back initially was, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Richard Branson, of course. And it makes sense that those folks are, incredibly successful. But there was no women on that list initially. So I said, okay, well, ladies, what about some women on this list? Is there anyone that you're following? And the resounding answer was Oprah. And I thought, okay, Oprah's fantastic. I totally get it. But if you're a jewelry designer in Iowa, and you're not interested in building a multi-billion-dollar media empire, how is that going to help you get to the next step in your business? So that's when I had that moment where I thought, okay, something, I really want to get down to the understanding why there aren't more women entrepreneurs at the forefront of women's minds when they start in a business.
Okay,
So,
yeah, that's excellent. And, I have my opinions and ideas, but, I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say since you've now written the book on it, Jenn. Why do you think it's important as women entrepreneurs that we look at women entrepreneur role models or women role models versus somebody like Richard Branson? I mean, what is the difference in your mind?
so in my mind, I think, and I talk about this in the book, I think it's wonderful to have Richard Branson on that list. And I think, if he speaks to you, then, I mean, he does to me. So he is on my list of role models. But he's not the only one. And I think that's where when I talk about role models, there needs to be what I call a whole stable, meaning that you should have role models for different things that you want to learn. So Richard Branson, in terms of like risk-taking and innovation, he's phenomenal. So you can learn a ton from that and giving back and charitable contribution. But there's also other people that you can learn from as well, that are perhaps only a few steps ahead of you within perhaps your niche or in your area of expertise. The other thing too is I think it's important to have a mix of women in there as well, because as we all know, we have our own challenges. A lot of women have decided to, when becoming moms, they want to figure out how they can, work from home, doing something that's really meaningful and bring in a substantial income while also being able to care for the children. So that's one thing that came up a lot in the conversations, was that, being a mom sometimes has, changed people's perspective on what work means to them. So I think that's why you need a lot of different examples.
I would agree with that. And I know I mentioned this a lot in my podcast, but I'm mom to a 3-year-old daughter, and I know that you're a mom too. You have a son, right, Jenn?
3 years old.
3 years old. So, that it presents some interesting challenges. And while I have a husband who stays home most of the time, there are really a lot of things that my daughter comes to me for and needs, I think, that my husband doesn't fulfill, but it also impacts what I'm able to do in terms of the business.
Right.
Do you find that with other women who are moms?
Yeah, I think, I think it's one of those things where you want to be present in all areas of your life. So, if you're say single, or it's maybe just you and a partner, you're able to stay up. You come home and stay up late and work, or you come home and have dinner and then get right to work. But when you have a family, you really want to be present for your kids. And when you come home, you don't get an extra few hours of work. Or they have other demands on you that, and I found that I personally have found that very challenging, because soon I have in my mind, I want to do this today. And, you have to really be flexible, because something seems to always kind of come in and say, no, you're not going to do that today. You're going to go do this today. And you're going to have to find some other pocket of time to make that work. So
totally. Yep. I totally am with you on that. So, and I could go on with stories about that, and I'm sure you could too.
Yes.
On the subject of role models, I want to nail that down a little more, because, when I think about a role model, I think about a woman who's a lawyer, who has 10 to 20 years of experience on me, And I don't know if I've been looking at it quite the way I should, because maybe I'm being too limiting, and I'm wondering if because you talked about how women should have a stable
Hmm.
and different types of women. And so can you talk about role models a little more in terms of
Yeah.
what we should be looking at?
So, when doing the research in the background on the concept of role models, it's actually a fairly new concept. It came out of the 1950s, and very similar to how you view role models. It was doctors looking at, or I should say, residents looking at more senior doctors to get ideas on how to become a better doctor. So that's how, and it was a sociologist who had studied this phenomena of how do we frame, our world by looking at the people in a similar peer group. And then the psychologist had taken it one step further and said, this is how you really learn how to try on different aspects of, different traits, different characteristics, different skills, different, achievements that you may want out of life by trying on what you see around you, and that's how you become kind of your ideal self. So similarly, how you're saying, like, you're looking at women within your peer group in your profession 10 years ahead, I think is what the original definition of role models meant. So I think it's fantastic if that's where you want to be in 10 years, and you see someone at that level, emulating those types of skills and characteristics. It might help you get there. My thing is, you don't want to necessarily look at just one person for that, because there's so much you can gain and learn from so many different people, and that's kind of pulling a little bit from everyone to figure out how to be the best person you can be without, well, the one thing I talk about a lot is, you're still being your authentic self. You're just trying to figure out how to refine your own skills and your own way of being, so that you're the best person you can be.
Yeah. And that feels a lot better to me, actually. So what I hear you saying, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that, maybe in terms of role models, you shouldn't limit yourself to a person in your industry or profession, but maybe look for different people that share values that
Yeah.
you have, or that you want, or that you want to
Right.
cultivate.
Yes.
Am I understanding you?
Yeah, I think you can look at certain people for values,
Yeah.
and then you may look for other people for very specific skills. So let's say they're a phenomenal online marketer, and that particular skill set is one that you're just like, wow, I really want to understand how they're doing that. And they're doing it in a way that feels good, because you do see a lot of online marketing that just doesn't feel good, but you see
Yes.
someone who really has it, it's authentic, and you're like, okay, I would love to really kind of watch what he or she is doing, and figure out how I can kind of integrate that into what I'm doing. But that may be all you take from that person. And then you go over here, and like you said, they have a certain value, maybe how they present themselves to the world. Maybe it's something where they're just an upstanding citizen, and they're fantastic at their work, and they have all sorts of other wonderful attributes. And then you look at them and you say, okay, I like what they're doing. How can I take some of the stuff that they're doing and integrate that into what I'm doing professionally and personally?
Okay. So as far as role models, I have a
Yep.
few questions, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember them, or
Okay.
whether you will once I ask them.
Okay.
But do you define having a role model as maybe just looking at someone from afar? Like, there's many women entrepreneurs who I see online. There's Marie
Yep.
Forleo, there is Natalie Sisson, there's a
Mhm.
few of them, and I don't necessarily have a personal relationship with these people, but they're doing things that I love.
Mhm.
So, in your mind, are these people role models, or are they something different?
I would put them. I mean, if you're looking at them and you're saying, "Wow, there's something about them that speaks to me and that I can learn from, and maybe even model in the sense of some characteristic or something that you really want to extract from them." Yeah, I would say they're role models. I mean,
Okay.
they're not necessarily mentors because you're not having a direct relationship with it, but they're kind of
Okay.
mentors in absentia. So you can look to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and on the topic of mentorship, which, is, it seems like there's a distinguishment between that, a mentor, and a role model, or they
Mhm.
can be the same thing.
Mhm.
So, mentors,
Yeah.
where do I find them? Where do all of these entrepreneurs who are listening to the show find them, these women entrepreneurs?
Mhm.
And what if you feel intimidated about reaching out to them because it's scary in some
Yeah.
situations?
So it is tricky, and especially I think tricky when you have a solo business and you're not really necessarily connected to a wider network. So I would imagine in law, you probably have through the years have met other more senior lawyers that you're able to kind of reach out to. But let's say you're at home and you're starting a business and it's all based online and you're maybe selling something. It can be very difficult to find mentors, very
Yeah.
difficult. And so it's a tricky thing. But from what I've heard and learned from some of the women that I interviewed is, if you just start following them online, through Twitter, really start to engage them in some way. If they let's say if they write a lot for Forbes, then you retweet their information, you comment on their work, you ask them really interesting questions. And then also do whatever you can to help promote them. That was the resounding advice I got more and more. The first thing you do is you don't necessarily want to go in and say, hey, can you be my mentor? That's the
Right.
absolute biggest turnoff. And one woman I spoke to, she's an angel investor, and she's invests in a lot of tech companies, and she said she gets calls all the time from women saying, oh, can you be my mentor? And she's like, I don't even know who you are. We have no background whatsoever. So I think
Right.
it's just like dating or a relationship. You have to just start slowly and start building a relationship, asking really smart questions, maybe just one question, because you have to be really respectful of people's time. And if you can connect with them on LinkedIn, you can connect to them on Twitter. With my project, I just reached out to people, totally cold call, and they were, very generous with their time. So sometimes, if you do end up having something that speaks to them or a question that really resonates with them, they may be able to answer it, and you can kind of develop a relationship from there.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
excellent. Excellent advice. Great advice. Thank you for that.
Yep.
So, how many interviews did you do, Jen?
I did 103. 103.
That's a lot. And how long did the process take? And were the interviews done over the phone or Skype?
Sure. So it was kind of a mix. I started March of last year, and I finished all the interviews by the middle of January of this year. So it took me a little under a year. And I know it was crazy, but it was amazing on how fast the process happened, because every woman was so excited to share like three or four people that she admired or that she knew or had high respect for. So it ended up being this amazing web of like connections that happened, and it happened very quickly. So yeah, so I was averaging maybe 3 to 4 calls a week. I only interviewed 2 people in person. The rest were either done through good old-fashioned telephone, or a few were Skype that were in Canada and
Oh, that's
Greece.
a.
Yeah,
I'm just blown away at how quickly this came together. So,
yeah, me too.
so, so did you start writing the book once the interviews were done, or were you
No,
writing the book?
I started the book when I was about, I would say about 40 to 50 interviews in. I started to see some very common patterns start to emerge. And so by August, I started to write the introduction, and then started to create these crazy charts of what I was seeing in common. And then as the I started the writing process, and it was great because each interview I was able to ask even a little bit more specific questions of things I was getting more curious about. Primarily around how they maintain their energy level, because what I kept hearing over and over again was, well, just even through the conversations, these women had so much energy and enthusiasm. I'm like, how do you maintain this with all the work you have in the families and the extracurricular activities? So that became an interesting conversation as time went on, and then as well as how they integrated family and their work. That as time went on, that was a question that I started asking more and more.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
excellent. Well, and since you mentioned the patterns that you started
Yeah,
to see. I would like to dive into these patterns a little bit.
yeah,
Obviously, we don't want to reveal all the secrets because we want everybody to go and buy the book and read
that's
it.
right. And there's just not enough time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So Jen, yes, we have
yeah,
probably about 10 minutes to
yeah,
go.
yeah.
If could you tell me the patterns or tell us about the patterns that you started to see in interviewing the ladies?
Yeah, so it was almost uncanny how the same things kept coming up over and over and over again. So what I did was, for the sake of organization and for the book flow, I broke it out into 5 different categories, which is essentially get out of your own way, is what I call one of the chapters, which has to do with mindset. The next one has to do with motivation. The following one is behavior, then connection and essentially tribe. And the last one is what I was talking about earlier, which is energy and how they keep and maintain their energy levels. So I broke it out into those 5 areas because those 5 things I think were just areas that everyone's interested in.
Yeah.
And then also that's where the patterns fell. And then within each of those 5 areas, there's about 4 to 5 different characteristics or traits that came up over and over again. So under the get out of your own way and having to do with mindset, the whole idea of facing your fears. So these women had just a remarkable insight about themselves. They knew that there's going to be fear, that everyone has fear, but they look at it, they recognize it, they name it, and they keep going. They don't let it stop them. And
Okay.
that was one thing where in my own world I kept seeing it with the women I knew, was that it was stopping them over and over and over again from taking either the next step or taking bigger risks or being more bold. So these women had a way of recognizing there isn't no fear. They know it's there and it's okay,
Right.
and it fuels them into action. So I loved that.
And
Um,
is that something that you experienced yourself? Because to me, it's such a shift from going to Wall Street
yeah.
to flip-flops, you know,
Yeah.
and that's huge.
Yeah. I think probably why that's the first one is because it's something that I have had to work on for years personally. So I think that's why it resonates so much with me, is it's been a constant work in progress. And so to hear all these amazingly successful women say, "Oh yeah, I was afraid, but I didn't let it stop me. I just
Yeah,
kept going." And I'm like,
just
"Oh,
did it.
okay." Yeah, I was so impressed by that. Yeah.
Perfect.
So then,
Perfect.
under motivation, and this is a huge thing. I put motivation second because you have to kind of get your mindset in order and all the mental chaos and chatter. But what I found under motivation was really they knew what their why was about the why in their work, the why in their life. They were very, very, very clear because I asked them the question, what motivates you, and it had very, very concrete answers as to what motivate them. And it wasn't, money, status, fame, power that you would, potentially expect to hear. It was, they have a purpose and they know what their purpose is. They want to have meaning in their life, and this helps fulfill that. And then there's always this underlying factor of wanting their work to impact others, either the people that they serve, their clients, their customers, or to create a life for themselves to support their family and the people in their community. So others were a big factor for their motivation,
Okay.
which was amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah, so then under behavior, so many good juicy bits there, but one that I love and I think all women could really benefit from was asking for help. These women were not shy about asking for help, and not only help, at the office or in their companies, but also, asking for just things out in the world, asking for introductions to other people,
Yep.
asking for, what they need at home, if they need to get help at home, not feeling like so many women said it was a lesson that they took many years to learn, but to get the help that they need earlier than later was a huge piece of advice that they gave.
And I think that for me anyway, that is a big one because I have this perception, and I don't know where it comes from, that when I ask people for things, and not in the scope of my work necessarily, because I'm paying people to help, in the office here, but if I'm
Right.
asking an outsider or somebody to babysit my daughter, I feel like I'm imposing upon people. I almost feel guilty, and so
Me too.
I need to really pay attention to that
Yeah.
chapter.
I know, I do too. And I remember one time reading or hearing that if the tables were turned, would it really be an imposition? Like if a friend came to you and said, "Hey, do you mind watching my kid?" I would say, "Of course, I'd be happy to." So I always
Yeah,
think, if the tables were reversed, would I be feeling imposed upon? Probably not.
yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
try to remember that a lot when I get that way too. So
Put yourself in the shoes of the other person.
exactly,
In other
exactly.
words, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about the phone. I forgot to take the phone out, but
Oh.
I don't want to get up and take it out now. Apologize.
No, gosh, no worries, no worries. We have toddlers. There's always noise going around on and
Yeah,
around
yeah,
us,
that's
right?
true. That's true.
Just
She's not
she's not
here,
here.
so so
Um,
okay.
so then the get connected piece, or so maybe that was the get connected. Oh, the energy piece, which was one, like I said, that was one of those subtopics or one of those topics that came up towards the end because I was fascinated by how these women were able to do so much when they're given these exact same hours in the day as we are.
Yeah.
Um, they were really good at saying no. So it kind
Hmm.
of got on the flip side of the asking, they were really good at saying no to things that just did not fit into where they're going. So they have their personal missions, they have their professional missions, and if something just did not fit in, they knew they had to say no to certain things,
Yeah.
and that it was okay to say no.
Yeah.
And so they got, again, it was a lesson that a lot of these women said it took them a while to figure out, but the sooner you figure it out, the better you'll be. So,
Yeah.
and that's no to a lot of things, no to, extra activities, no to, doing the laundry once a week. I know
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
because when you start saying no to things, you say yes to yourself and to
Yes.
what's really meaningful for you and what's important. So that's
That's
another tricky thing for women.
I think so. I mean, that's beautiful, and it's good to hear. And I would think for a lot of women entrepreneurs, I'm just guessing, I don't know,
Yeah.
that, they are overachievers and type A personalities and don't feel like they can rest unless all the laundry's done and the kitchen is cleaned up, and everything is in a nice, pretty package, I would think. At least I'm just speaking for myself, really.
Yeah.
So it would be difficult to say, okay, I'm just going to let the laundry go for a few more days or whatever.
Right. It's true. It's one of the women I spoke to. She's hilarious. She's like, I have a messy house. That's just the way it is. It was just like, she's like, I've given up on it. My house is messy. She's like, and it's my work's more important right now.
Yeah.
So, she realized that there's certain areas that are going to be impacted, and instead of worrying about it and stressing about it and trying to do it all, she just said, okay, that's what's going to be let go. One thing that with the women with the energy was really interesting was that a lot of women didn't sleep much.
Yeah.
And so that was, especially some of the, the ones that took their companies public and had these multi-million-dollar companies. A lot of them are like, oh yeah, I don't sleep that much, and I was like, wow, oh.
Yeah.
But they also found ways to keep their energy. I mean, they didn't sleep like 2 or 3 hours. I mean, they were sleeping maybe 5 or 6. But
Okay.
it's good to know that that's where they were sacrificing in their life was their
Yeah.
sleep, so that there's no surprises as to how they were able to accomplish so much. So,
Right.
not that
Right.
I'm promoting that by any means.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Some
Exactly.
people just don't need as much as others. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. All right. So yeah. Did we cover all five or did we cover four? I
Did
think.
we? I think we did. So it's mindset, motivation, behavior. Oh, maybe I missed on behavior. Behavior, a huge one,
Yes.
really quick,
Yeah.
because it's a huge thing. I mean, it's being out in the world, right, and interacting with other people. So the one of the key factors under behavior is that these women took action. They had an idea, they had something that they wanted to say or do or be, and they took action in the world. And, they didn't have to take all the action in one day, but they continually took action every single day. And I think that is really, really key. And one of the things that I found also through these conversations was that a lot of times this action helped create clarity. So, the clarity in their ideas or in the execution came after they started taking some action. I think a lot of people get stumped up because they're not exactly sure what they're wanting to do or how they want it to look, and always wanting to strive to be perfect.
Yeah.
And so they said, just do it. Just get out there, just try it, and then if it doesn't work, then do something else or try a different direction or pivot or whatever needs to happen. But the important thing is the action piece, which I'm glad we ended with that, because that's the key one, is really taking action.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Just basically get out there and do it.
Yeah.
Everybody who's listening, right?
Yeah.
And that works, and it makes perfect sense. To me and in the friends of my, in my life, my friends' lives that I see, sometimes they just get paralyzed by overwhelmment or fear. But as soon as they just take one little step, it could be making a to-do list or picking up the phone, that you feel a little better because you did something to relieve that overwhelmment, just a tiny bit.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to. And I think what happens is we see our massive to-do list and we don't even know where to start. And so you just kind of stop. And if you just start with one little item, it's amazing how it just kind of snowballs and a little bit. I mean, the book and this whole process of writing it was a testament to that. I just did a little tiny bit every day when I had a pocket of time. Yeah. So I feel like that's just how you have to do it,
Well, it's great. I'm so excited about it, and I'm excited for you. And I want to show the book on screen to everybody out there. So go pick up a copy of the book. And Jenn, can you tell people where they can find it?
Sure. You can first find it on my website, which is jennaubert.com, and it's JENNAUB as in boy, ERT.com. And if you purchase it there, then you get a complimentary workbook it really is a nice companion to, it has all sorts of exercises and ways to get you into action. And if not there, then take a look at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and you can even order it at your local bookstore and have it delivered there. So you can find it anywhere.
Perfect. It's one of the first of its genre, and I'm so excited again. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. And I'm going to keep my eye on you. And who knows where we'll see you, Jenn. But thank you so much for sharing your time. It was a gift, and I loved talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Wendy. This has been a great call.
Thank you. Okay. So for all you out there listening, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Family Law Insider podcast. Check out Jenn, check out her book. And remember, we're on your side when it matters most. I'll see you next time.